Let's talk about the influences of the sternum. Good morning. Happy Monday. I have Neuro Coffee in hand and it is perfect. Ooh, that is quite good, actually. All right. So we had a pretty solid weekend. Looking forward to another great week. Got lots of mentorship calls this week, so that's going to be fun. I really enjoy those. Which reminds me, if you would like to get on a 15-minute consultation, please send me an email at askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com, and we'll set that up. Which leads us into today's Q&A. I got a chance to talk to Greg, and Greg has some interesting influences that I think are going to help a lot of people through this discussion. So he was kind enough to share some medical history. He actually had a sternotomy where they basically slice open your sternum as a youth. And so we talked about the potential influences there. Greg is also a musician and a physical therapist. So we have some really good thinking, and we have some performance related influences that come into play in this discussion as well. And so all of these things need to be considered when we're trying to make changes in movement capabilities. So thank you, Greg, for your participation and for sharing like you did. It's going to help a lot of people. So enjoy today's Q&A. And remember, if you have a question, go to askbillhartman@gmail.com, askbillhartman@gmail.com, set up your 15-minute consult, and we'll get that taken care of. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Clock is running. Go ahead. Fire away.
Okay. So a couple of months back, you talked about median sternotomy and how that might affect, depending on how things heal, and how that might affect measurements in the extremities because of what's happening internally.
Yeah.
The first part of the question is, could you kind of talk through maybe some of that in terms of what you might see? And then my second, like asking for a friend kind of thing, except, it's me, obviously.
Yeah.
The thing I'm trying to do is get left shoulder flexion back, because I play upright bass. And so
Upright bass.
Yeah. So
wow. Okay. I know what an upright bass is, dude.
You got it?
Yeah.
So it's that sort of thing, like.
So what do you play? What kind of music?
So I play jazz.
Oh, okay. I got you. Awesome. Perfect.
It's one of those things where it's kind of a right behind left stance.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. No, I understand. I'm with you. My sister's a string instrument player, so been exposed to that a fair amount. So okay. So when they fillet you open, as we would say, you have to have a union of the sternum. Okay. So the sternum is, so as it forms, it is two bones that sort of zipper together in the middle when you were made. Okay. And so it behaves as two bones. So you have a left sternum and a right sternum. When we talk about compression and expansion through the rib cage, you have two sides, right? So it's not this one thing that's turning, it's two things that turn together. Yeah. And you also have the synovial joints of the ribs that are attached. So we have a lot of movement around the sternum that we need to have normal ability to expand and change shape, which is what we need to make the shoulder move. So when you have the sternotomy and then did they wire you back together?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they wire you back together. So there's a couple of things that can happen. Obviously, did they talk to you about non-unions and things like that?
Not really. I was 12, so they didn't go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So sometimes what can happen is you get what's called a non-union, which is it's either an incomplete or not even a fusion of the sternum back into its previous state. And of course, it's not going to be in its previous state. So we need to understand that too. But if you get any sort of like a hingy kind of a relationship, now you don't get the I don't want to say uniform, but it's like this coordinative expansion and compression kind of thing, because you got an extra hinge in the middle. And so that makes it very difficult to create internal pressure. So if you were a singer and you had the sternotomy and you had a non-union, you wouldn't be able to sing. You cannot project your voice when you don't have this normal behavior of the sternum. So there's a sweet spot between this stiffness and then this mobility that we need under these circumstances. So again, for like you think about like a higher force
exhalation kind of a strategy, like if you were trying to project your voice and you had this spot that gave way, now you've got a weak spot in the system, and therefore the pressure does not ramp up under normal circumstances, okay? Secondly, if it's stiff and it doesn't turn, now we have the limitation in our ability to change shape that's associated with that, and you're gonna have some form of restriction. So just think about normal breathing. If I have to breathe in, I should have this pump handle that can move. And if I don't have that, then I'm going to have to create a substitution to breathe in. So a lot of people that have anterior compressive strategies, they come in and people say, oh, you're breathing with your neck. So you'll see all of this extra accessory muscle activity that's associated with trying to lift the rib cage upward to create the expansion versus the anterior posterior expansion. Okay. So the question mark is this an influence for you or is it not? Right? That would be the step one. Mm-hmm. Based on your age that the surgery was done, it's in your favor that it's not that much of a deal. Okay. Because when you're as young as you were when it happened, chances are you were still mostly cartilaginous, as it were, under those circumstances. And so because you weren't fully calcified, the chances of it being a limitation is probably slim. Okay. Now, your physical structure lends you towards certain strategies, right? So you're tall, right?
Not that tall. I'm like 5'10".
Okay. Well, but that's above average. I'll give you that. Right. All right. But again, so now you're going to be biased towards a certain strategy as far as expansion and compression is concerned. And then how do you hold yourself in space? And then that's going to be how the superficial influences affect your ability to maintain your center of gravity, turn, breathe, etc. Okay. And then you picked an instrument right, that creates a structural, or not a structural bias, but a coordinative bias, right? There's a certain position that you have to be in to play your instrument.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. And my guess is that if you're playing at any level, you've practiced a bit. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a really strong training influence.
Yeah.
So just like anybody that would spend too much time in the gym relative to what they need to do for their sport, you have a certain influence, a physical influence that's going to be what we would call interference.
Yes.
Okay. So now we have to come up with a plan that offsets the negative consequences in regards to movement that your desired activity creates.
That's right.
Okay. So if we talk about limitations in what would be referred to as traditional shoulder flexion, the early phase of that movement requires that you have a posterior expansion in the area below the level of the shoulder blade to initiate that movement without any compensatory strategy or without any movement that will be required to move away from that midline, right? And that's where your struggle is. Is that fair?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. Do you notice the same thing in your hips?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So at least you match, and that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So the chances of us having a constraint problem, like a structural change that we can't do anything about, is reduced under those circumstances, because if your shoulder and your hip kind of match, then that would be just lending towards behavior and then physical structure. Okay. Now you're just like everybody else. You have stuff that moves on the inside, right? That you're managing. And then like I said, you've got the superimposition of the activities. So you're going to have to offset, to as much that you can, you have to offset those influences. So you have two things. You have the normal gravitational influences, and then you have behavior. So what have you done so far that has been effective?
Okay. So I also had like a strength training period for about 7 years where I was going pretty hard in the gym.
Gotcha.
So I grew kind of this like monster on the left side of my back. That kind of
You grew a monster, is that what you said?
It's like a creature over there. It's just the asymmetry in the development kind of the lumbar area all the way up. it's like visible, and it's something that when that kind of kicks in, because when you're holding the base, you kind of like go to it. Like when that kicks in, then the shoulders just it can't hang because everything's just so far pushed.
You feel like you're getting shoved from behind, kind of a thing?
Yeah, big time.
Okay. Okay.
From below. So it's like I get to the point where like when that's pushing hard, I really got to get the left side of the pelvis to come back, and I got to get the anterior pelvic floor to come up.
Correct.
To that level of forward.
Right. Yeah. So so literally you're getting shoved into the ground on that side as well, right? So what that push forward becomes is that's the source of your internal rotation. So you probably heard me talk about this, is that internal rotation, we talk about internal rotation with humans as this thing that turns in and downward. It's the downward force that we're trying to create. And so because of the orientation of your pelvis and your rib cage, and then because of the influence of your playing position, you have to create internal rotation somewhere, and you can't do that when you're oriented the way that you are. And so what you do is you just push harder from behind. That throws that side of the pelvis down and forward, and then your anterior pelvic outlet is going down, and that's what pins you into the ground. So it works great, right? Unfortunately, it's going to create the limitations that we're talking about, which is that shoulder flexion, hip flexion, external rotation measures are all going to be in deficit. Okay.
Right.
So let me tell you a quick story.
Sure.
I worked with the #2 viola player for the Indianapolis Symphony Orchestra. And she had a similar kind of an issue. So you think about the position that they're playing in, very similar to your situation, right? And so I did a little test with her, and I had her bring in her axe, and I had her play. And I said, show me the position that you practice in. So she likes to stand up when she practices. And so she was standing pretty much the way you would stand if you were playing your stand-up bass. Okay. Very similar. Yes, exactly right. Exactly right. And so, and then I tried to flip flop her orientation. I said, I'm going to put you in the opposite orientation. Yeah, well, not her upper extremities, just the way that she was standing. So she was compressed left posterior, getting shoved forward, just like you were. And so what we did is we put her in an early propulsive representation on that left side, right? So I had her push forward on the right, and then create the delay on the left. And and she had already played a piece of music, and then she froze, like literally didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because it was so unfamiliar to her, because she's never in that orientation ever in regards to her play. So she literally froze, and then she proceeded to play, in her mind, horribly.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So the thing that we want to recognize is, number one, if you're going to keep playing the bass, don't worry about the position that you're using to play the bass. Play the bass well. Do that really, really well. What we need now is the strategy on all other circumstances. So there's got to be enough work done to make sure that you can create that delay strategy on the left side. So everything that you do, so you're going to be the guy that kind of falls into the platformed, heels elevated, goblet, squat stuff to start to create some of that. So when you get into the deeper end of that squat, you want to be able to create the counter-nutated sacrum with the delay strategy. So with the yielding action at the base of the sacrum. So you're going to do a front foot lead. So the split stance activities for you is going to become very, very important, because the split stance is what allows you to create the turns. Okay. So the traditional single leg stuff, probably not where you would want to start. Okay. So you need 2 foot contacts, but an asymmetrical foot contact in everything that you're doing, except for like I said, maybe the foot elevated goblet squat. Okay. Because you need to learn how to maintain and create turns. That requires a 2 foot contact. The minute you pick up the other foot and you're in a single leg stance, you have just reduced the amount of turning that you're capable of within the pelvis, because that's where we got to start to look at this thing. We're going to build this from the pelvis up. Okay. So split stance, staggered stance, all right? That's where your money is, all right? Does that make sense to you when I say things like that?
Yep.
Okay. So again, that's going to be, so you have to think about like all the cool stuff that I want to be able to do, right? And then I just need to offset it with enough of the opposing activities. So I don't lose my ability to make those turns, because that's what's blocking your ability to raise your arm. Okay. Any questions so far?
No. That all squares.
Okay. Now let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Okay. So assuming that you can capture the shoulder range of motion and the hip range of motion that is required, you're going to slowly want to move into positions that will favorably influence the up pump handle. You want to make sure that you're maintaining that. Okay. And so quadruped activities are really, really good for that. Okay. Arm supported kind of activities, and then working towards the inverted position. Okay. So this is going to be a situation where your behind is higher than your shoulders, and you'll be, propped through the arms and things like that. The great thing about that is it flip-flops the airflow. So lungs fill from the bottom up when you're standing upright like a glass of water. But if I turn you upside down, guess what? Gravity helps us fill the upper part. Okay. And so that's going to be one of those things that will be a staple for you in some of your movement activities. Eventually, what I would say is that when you do start to recapture this stuff consistently, you want to turn this into dynamic activity. So old school gym class stuff is going to be your long-term friend. Okay. Bear crawls, things like that, where your hips are a little bit higher than your shoulders, you're loading through the extremities, and you're capturing that early propulsive position, through the shoulder girdle and through the upper thorax. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
What questions do you have? Very quickly, you have 45 seconds.
No, that kind of covers what I've been up to. So I'm glad I'm on the same page there.
Well, if that's what you're doing, then you are on target.
Yeah, that
Okay.
is on my list.
Yeah. Sometimes you just need more stuff.
Just and more volume of the same good stuff.
Yeah. So again, it's like, how much do you practice? How much do you play? And then how often are you on your feet? Like, all of these things come into play. It's like sometimes people are doing the exact right thing that they need to do. They're just not doing enough of it to offset the circumstance. So we always talk about secondary consequences that are associated with all of these activities. Like I don't want to take anything away from you, but okay. So if I'm going to play, let's say you play 2 hours a day of stand-up bass, okay, and you do 5 minutes of work to try to offset it.
Yeah, right. Maybe.
Not enough.
Yeah,
which adaptation wins, right? You see what I'm getting at? Some people they say, I just can't find the right exercise. It's like, what are you doing? It's like, and then you tell me what you're doing. It's like, okay, you're doing the right stuff. How much of it are you doing? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do to offset it? Right.
I sometimes think that because I'm a PT as well, and sometimes I think that like some of the manual therapies and things like that we're doing during the day can like bleed into not being able to acquire that. So that creates an element of interference as well. It's kind of like that day-to-day sort of. Yeah.
Manual therapy is rarely a solution. It's a window of opportunity.
Right.
You're trying to create something that the patient can't create for themselves. And then that's what allows them to sense something, capture something, and then you give them something to reinforce that. That's basically how that works.
Right.
All right, young man, I got to run to the next call. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks, Bill.
Excellent. Excellent. I'll see you on the coffee call.
Yeah, of course. We'll see you.
Excellent. All right, man. I'll see you Thursday.